Well, here in Europe, we have saddled ourselves with the Pollyanna politics of open borders, where the only unwelcome guest is reality, because our phony liberal guilt has finally mutated into open self-hatred, and we're prostrating ourselves to the Muslim third world as if performing some kind of penance. As a consequence, we're importing into Europe a violent rape culture that directly threatens the safety and freedom of women, and we're just sitting back and letting it happen as if we've been hypnotized. It seems like almost every second day now we hear about some new violent sexual atrocity committed by migrants, usually in Sweden or in Germany, although last week in Austria a family of 9 Iraqis went on trial for gang raping a woman for hours on New Year's Eve. And these attacks have now become so commonplace that nobody was even surprised last week to find out that the latest trend in Sweden is live streaming gang rapes on the internet for everyone's entertainment. In the latest incident, the man who reported his fellow Tunisians, and all credit to him for doing so, said that they don't regard rape as a crime at all. They consider it normal behaviour. As do the Swedish police. Apparently, they can't even be bothered to investigate a rape when they have it on video and when they know the ID and location of the rapist. So, is it any wonder so many women in Sweden say they're afraid to go out on their own after dark? And this situation, of course, is being replicated now in Germany too. And it's a situation we've known about for some time. So you'd think there'd be a bit more brewing anger from women, especially from the ones who call themselves feminists. But I don't hear very many female voices raised in protest. Do you? Maybe they've got more important things to focus on, like feminism. Oh, feminism is all the rage here in Europe. Recently, Sweden proudly announced itself as the world's first feminist government and smugly took a round of applause for it too before sending a female delegation to Misogyny Central, Iran, where they all obediently wore headscarves in submission to Islamic male supremacy like the good feminists they are. Of course, we all had a good laugh at them for it, but nobody was at all surprised. So, if you're a woman in Europe who's hoping that the feminists are going to fight your corner, dream on. They've already sold you down the river and they're waving you goodbye with their headscarves on while they get their knickers all in a twist about Donald Trump because they're too thick to understand that he's on their side. And by the way, if you want an example of a real feminist as opposed to a phony progressive feminist, then check out Anne-Marie Waters, who's been bravely defending women's rights for years, only to be attacked and vilified for it by ignorant progressive dimwits who've never had an original thought in their lives. If we had a few more women of her calibre, feminism might even get respectable again. So if that sounds like you, now is the time to make yourself known. In the meantime, you stupid women who still applaud this invasion, who welcome these fake refugees as long as they live in somebody else's neighbourhood, obviously, you are like spectators at an approaching tsunami. You've got no idea what's coming your way, and by the time you find out, it's going to be too late. And if you don't think it'll happen to you, well then it won't, until it does. The women who've been raped in Sweden and Germany didn't think it would happen to them either. How can it be true, they thought? The stories we hear about this culture. No, it can't be that brutal, surely. And then they find out that yes, it is that brutal, and that rape carried out by Muslim migrants is, more often than not, excessively violent. And when they are arrested and taken to court, they get off with a light sentence that insults the victim and encourages more rape. Recently in Sweden, where else? A Syrian man, pretending to be a child, got 2 months in prison for raping 2 girls, one of 13, who was dragged into a toilet and raped both vaginally and anally. He got 2 months because Sweden's feminist government clearly doesn't regard rape as a crime worthy of serious punishment. And although there was evidence from the Migration Board that he was a grown man, the court didn't think that was enough and chose to believe him when he said he was a child. The prison will be on a par with a 2-star hotel, and he's unlikely to be deported afterwards, as his human rights outrank those of any 13-year-old Swedish girl. No, he'll be free to remain in Sweden with his ugly values intact, and he'll be free to rape again. You know, you women in Europe, you really should know your place by now, if you don't mind me saying so. And you should know that your place is at the ballot box, defending yourselves from this invading rape culture, because it's clear now that nobody is going to do it for you. You can't rely on men to help you, that's for sure. Certainly not this generation of moral eunuchs who've never had to fight for anything worthwhile and wouldn't know where to start. And despite what anyone else might tell you, defending yourself from a violent rape culture is not racist. And unlike women in the Muslim world, you still have a choice about whether to do so. But it's a choice you need to make now, because later will be too late. You can choose either to oppose this Islamic invasion with the only effective weapon you have, your democratic vote, or, if you prefer, you can wait until the Muslim third world has arrived in your neighbourhood or your daughter's neighbourhood, and the streets are full of men who won't keep their hands to themselves. Men who've been raised to believe that an uncovered woman, that's you, deserves to be assaulted and raped, who think it's perfectly normal behaviour, and who have no intention of being educated out of it. These men will now be part of your daily experience, and their ugly values will cast a permanent shadow over your life. That is what you wanted when you said, "Refugees welcome," isn't it? I certainly hope it is, because it's what you're getting, and if you complain about it, other women who still live in nice, safe neighbourhoods will call you a racist to impress their friends. In the meantime, you can get used to being insulted in the street for not covering your head, and get used to running a daily gauntlet of groping hands. And don't expect the law to protect you, because when the police are not there, and they won't be, the law is about as useful as a chocolate frying pan or a PhD in gender studies. In short, if you are Islamophobic enough to be female in Europe, you need to wake up, and you need to do it now. You have no moral right to continue giving this ugly culture the benefit of the doubt. There isn't any doubt, and you know that. Violent misogyny is not just some minor aspect of it. It's up front and central, and you have no excuse for not resisting it with everything you've got if you care about your daughters and granddaughters. You know, women are half the population, so theoretically, you can put a stop to this if you want to. The only question is, how many sexual assaults and rapes are you prepared to tolerate before you decide that enough is enough? Well, we might find out soon. Elections are coming up in the Netherlands and in France, and later in the year in Germany, where it's clear that the people currently in charge have no intention of changing anything and will continue letting in hordes of men who are a proven danger to women and girls. So what are you women going to do about that, now that you've got this chance? You women in France who found that you're no longer welcome in your local cafe because it's full of Muslim men who don't want you there and who've declared the public space for men only. Here's your chance to push back against that and against all the other Islamic intrusion and violence that's poisoning your society and that always impacts most strongly on women, including Muslim women. And the same thing applies in the Netherlands and everywhere else in Europe. How threatening to women does this invasion have to get before you vote against it? And it might mean voting for people you wouldn't normally support in the way that you wouldn't normally use a weapon. But this is necessary self-defense. The people you did support have sold you out. It's thanks to them that you can no longer afford to do nothing and remain free. Already in Sweden and Germany, we hear about women being told to modify their appearance and behaviour to avoid being raped, as if it's their fault. Being warned by the police not to go out alone at night because they can't be protected. Their lives are already being hemmed in by these barbarians, and the more of them who come in, the worse it will get. The Muslim ghettos, the police no-go zones, they're not going anywhere. They're going to grow like tumours in size and in number until nowhere in Europe is safe for women. You can see it coming like a pair of headlights. You've got no excuse. I mean, women have only been emancipated in the West for a few generations. This Islamic invasion is the first serious test of that. We'll soon find out how solid and permanent it really is. And you, the women of Europe, are the ones who will show us. When push comes to shove, as it already has, are you prepared to defend yourselves and your daughters from a violent rape culture or not? If you are, then you know as well as I do that you have to vote for people who will stop this invasion. And you have to do